and welcome to the House of L, covering this week's episode of Peacemaker, episode 4 of season 2. I'm William.
I'm Derek. Need I say door?
I was literally about to do the exact same thing. I was after you were done, I was going to say, need I say door?
Yeah. I like a good pun. The last few have been good puns, so I don't know if we continue to be or not, although it is very tempting to peek ahead, knowing we only have one episode left that we can review in advance before apparently the everything hits the fan in episodes 6, 7, and 8. I can't believe we're already halfway over with the season.
I know, it's crazy.
At this point, I don't know where you're at, but I am thoroughly enjoying this ride. I think coming off the heels of Superman, I think I'm enjoying these even more well-developed characters from here in their sophomore outing. Everything all around, I've just really enjoyed. Other than the fact that other than that one scene on the rooftop, we've not had our core. We haven't had our 11th Street kids all together. Everybody's kind of broken up at this point, so I feel like that's coming, definitely.
I think it is coming, but not in a way in which we hope that it will be a positive notion.
Yeah.
I do really like seasons that I think, you know, are you familiar with the Surf Dracula meme?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for those who are unfamiliar, there is a meme that has kind of been generated around the idea of pilot seasons, basically, where instead of the idea is basically nowadays, if there's a show called Surf Dracula, they'll spend the entire season figuring out how Surf Dracula got his surfboard.
Yeah, I think the tweet is, back in the day, if you had a show called Surf Dracula, you'd see him surfing every week.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And now in this day and age, it would take you to the end of season 1 to find out how he got the surfboard.
Which in some ways is kind of Smallville. It took us 10 seasons. It was 10 seasons of Surf Dracula, but it was thoroughly entertaining in its own way, right?
Yeah.
I think I bring up Surf Dracula to say the idea or notion that we've spent so much time this season kind of really apart from everyone. I mean, we do have that party at the rooftop at Harcourt's place, but that doesn't feel, that's really the only moment of community that the show has had. Otherwise, it has very intentionally separated everyone out into these disparate components. And I think that is the Surf Dracula element of this season, is that we're going to see everyone come back together, and that unto itself is going to be this really big triumphant moment. Although I think before we even get to that, it's very clear to me what the construction of episode 4 is doing is to bring everyone together next week to have all of these fireworks come together, as it looks like Harcourt is going to betray Chris for the sake of getting her life back, and Chris will have some sort of altercation with Rick Flag. Well, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I think this episode did such a good job, I think, of ratcheting up this tension that we're going to see unfold next week, while I think providing some really good underlying understanding of, okay, we're going to understand why Chris wants to leave this universe because of all the things that are set up in this episode that are dominoes that will fall in next episode. Like, we have to have a real driving catalyst for Chris to want to enter Earth X, as we're calling it, and truly leave this other world behind for this best dimension ever. And it looks like the show is providing a real scorched earth approach to Chris's decision-making behind that, based on what we see throughout the course of this episode.
I still don't think that she's going to betray him. I still think that's a setup or a double cross or something. Like, I given how much exposition and background we got on her last week, and how much more layered her relationship with Peacemaker is now, I feel like Harcourt still at her best is not going to turn on him, even though that's what is seemingly happening here at the end. we do stay primarily on our Earth. No, we do stay on our Earth completely this time around. And
Mhm.
you mentioned Earth X, and I know we joked about that last week, but I went back and watched episode 3 again, and I'm just more convinced than ever that, again, the whole grass is greener on the other side. It's got to be something's got to be wrong. Things are just too perfect over there, and he's so blind to it all because everything is so. His dad says he loves him. His brother's alive. Amelia's in love with him, and so he's got his rose colored lenses on, not seeing what is really going on, the evil that's going on behind the scenes, because it feels off. I did listening to the official Peacemaker podcast. I did hear Gunn refer to the Earth as Earth 2, but I think that was just a in the comparison of this Earth, that is Earth 2,
Sure.
not actually a in nomenclature, but just a reference, or not even a reference, but just a call sign, I guess you would say. Um, I did notice though there is a line earlier in the season that I didn't really catch on, but it made me think of there was a line in this episode that made me think of it. But when they're making their escape, when Chris and Adebayo are getting away and they're going to the grandfather's cabin in the woods, and he says that these are 99 potential doors. And I said last week, I said I would not be surprised if we got some more backstory on whatever this is. And out of the gate, in the cold open, we literally get that. And I still don't think the door is, no pun intended, the door is closed there, because I feel like there's more to that. And even Chris says, when she says, Adebayo says, I think, I thought he was some genius and he created all that tech. And Chris is like, yeah, that's a long story. So something else is going on there. Regardless, the reference made about the 99 doors, at some point earlier, Chris told Adrian, it's not, this door is 9 doors down from mine.
Mm,
It's just a big
that
old Roman
is
numeral X to me.
that is X, is it not?
In a total throwaway line. But it's little stuff too that you look at. I still, are we comfortable calling it Earth X on this show, or should we refer to it as Earth 2? I don't know, but
I think for the purposes of the theory that we are positing that this is ostensibly Nazi Earth, right?
yeah,
Which I
I
I
mean,
think
it's yeah,
is
I think it's. I mean, you're in a world where nobody knows who the Kardashians are. Um, I saw not one person of color in that last episode in any of the streets, anybody chanting, Peacemaker's name, any of the onlookers at when the terrorists took over the terrorist group, we talked about the Sons of, or the Liberty Group, and how they were targeting government agencies like HUD and DMV. Um, and then I was watching this week because we got a lot more of our Harcourt in this episode. She's far more rough around the edges than the Earth X Amelia is, but even to the point where our Amelia's hair, like her, you can see the roots,
Mhm.
like she's got and then like on that Earth, like she's perfectly blonde.
Yep.
Like it's just little like, and it's such subtle stuff that now is, that's even like everybody holding up the peace sign, and there's just Tim that does our social media was even like, have you looked to see if all the cars are Volkswagen? Like, if you go,
Oh, that's
and
funny.
we did, and it's not, but just how deep down the rabbit hole they got with it. But I don't think that's all there is to it, because I do think after the last episode, people are opening their eyes to, yeah, something's got to be wrong here, and it's probably something along those lines. So I do feel like there's more at stake than just, oh, this is just where the Nazis won, or some variant
Yeah.
of that story. I do know that if everybody from our crew does end up over there, it's not going to go great. I can't imagine.
No.
I can't imagine. Black, gay Adebayo getting a warm welcome on that Earth. Much less Fleury or Bordeaux if they were to come over there. So I think we're going to butt heads real quick once we see where this is going in the second half of the season. and find out that things are not so rosy over there.
I think it's also there is a precedent for it, right? The first season really confronted that idea of Augie as a Nazi head on. They did
Hmm.
not shy away from it. That was a critical part of the story. So it is within the tapestry of the Peacemaker story to explore these things in a very direct way. So it's not like exploring an Earth that is a perfect reflection of Augie's ideology is completely out of the question. There's a foundation for it and would certainly make sense for a lot of the things that we're seeing. And I think has also been a part of Creature Commandos, which gets a nice little shout out here this week as well, albeit very briefly when Rick Flag Sr. is talking to Harcourt. But GI
Right.
Robot would have a field day here, presumably, if that is the world in which they're headed into. So this has been something that is one of Gunn's pet projects, I would say.
Hmm.
So to have it manifest here again, I think is something that would certainly not be out of the realm of possibility, as I said. To Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking too. There's also this, and you and I talked about this, I think, week before last. The out of the gate, or our second or even third outing in the DCU, already getting a multiversal kind of story. As this season goes on, it also just kind of feels like, and it's kind of in the same way with Superman. With the events of the film, it's just like, yeah, this happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
Metropolis. Yeah, there's a multiverse. And whereas like in the MCU it became this big thing, oh, the multiverse, and
It doesn't
we've
draw attention
understand
to itself,
it,
right?
it's just like, oh, it's another day of the week here, it's
Yeah.
just another thing. And so yeah, there's 99 possible doors or whatever. I guess they could have said 52 doors or whatever, but it's just very much this, why would you do this in season 2 of Peacemaker when you've just established the DCU? Because it's just a thing that exists in this universe. It's just another item on a long laundry list of things that the DC Comics has to offer. And it's not some thing we're building to, it's just part of it.
Well, it's been a part of the comics for even Marvel, even before
Right.
Marvel doing
Right.
multiple universes, right? Like Marvel's foray into multiple universes, I'm sure there were instances of it in the comics before, but the one that I am very keenly aware of, obviously, is the creation of the Ultimate Universe in 2000
Right.
in 2001, the early aughts. I can't quite remember the publication. I believe it was the 2000s. Regardless, the Ultimate Universe, and now that's something else that they have doubled down on again is the creation of the Ultimate Universe. But that is, Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Hmm.
Like that
The
was
the the
a
the
landmark
multiverse
event.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so DC has certainly had their claws into multiversal storytelling for much, much longer than Marvel certainly has, despite the fact that I think if you look at multiversal things, people have a larger association with Marvel in recent years than they do DC. So in some regard, it's nice to see DC kind of come back and restake their claim on that, even if they are doing it in a way that is far less showy or splashy than Marvel has done. Also, to your point, it is kind of just there, and I think that is really what has excited me about Gunn's approach to all of this stuff is that it doesn't draw a lot of attention to itself, and Gunn respects the audience enough to pick up on all of these things, right? We can have the mention of June Moon, and people understand that, okay, she's a part of this universe now, we're bringing that over. Yeah, it can maybe be a little tough to understand what is fully canon, but at the end of the day, as long as it gets mentioned, like, that is a pretty good signpost for me as far as what matters or what doesn't matter. I do wanna touch on something you said earlier, though, which is I like the idea that even as the season continues, we're still deconstructing the family myth or particularly the myth around Augie. One of the things
Hmm.
that I really enjoyed was Vigilante's sort of understanding in season 1 was like, "Oh, your dad's pretty brainy for a racist." Now to see this is something where it's actually Chris had a better understanding of how this works than Augie really ever seemed to do, is an interesting wrinkle to Chris's character, and I think certainly makes him much smarter than I think we continue to give him credit for. He's quite resourceful as far as being able to understand how this portal works. And I do have to say that the sequence of swapping the doors was a pretty thrilling and funny sequence with some
Mhm.
really good work from Steve Agee here, who I think has
Mhm.
been a little bit of a he's I I say this and I don't want to make it sound like I'm devaluing anything that I have to say, but it's always really cool when someone who is functionally, I would say, leans more comedic, I think, in their presence, has moments where they get to do some real drama or real tension, and AG really nails those moments in particular. I think it's cool to see him kind of stumble and bumble his way through this in a very intentional way, while also showing off his prowess and his skill at being able to do these things. Like, there's a reason why he is needed in Argus. He is smart, he is resourceful, but we get to have that nice character moment with him too, where he's trying to figure out a way to help Chris while still having to do his job. And I like that tension of being really stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Uh, so yeah, I want to shout out Steve Agee for the work that he's
Mhm.
doing.
No,
It's really good stuff.
I agree. Everything leading up in the truck, between him and Tim Meadows and Bordeaux and Flurry. I couldn't think of it, but everybody having that tete-a-tete kind of going on in the truck leading up to the onslaught at the cabin. You've also got Rooker's character, who is an
Him and
original
Rooker going
character
back
here.
and forth, just incredible stuff,
Fantastic.
man.
Fantastic. But and also shout out to Rooker for just making me believe everything he was saying about Eagle, like just the most ridiculous character ever. But also, I'm buying into it 100% because of how believable he's making that that craft, I guess. And I appreciate Economos going to bat for Eagly, knocking him out and then to just the crazy backstory that Red St. Clair has now with the ultimate eagle, the prime alpha of all eagles, and his third eye has been opened now. So it's just, it kind of us just calling him out on every bit of it. Whereas I love the bumpers at the end with the outtakes or the extended moments where they just kind of keep pining off each other. I don't know if you watched this one, but it was.
I did. I do think that's also funny that age has been a large portion of those, right? We
Mhm.
have the one between him and Vidge in the with the jeans, and then him and
Mhm.
Flurry with the Peppermint
The
Twins
Peppermint
gag,
Twins. Yeah.
which I did see the clip from the Peacemaker or from some interview that he did where AG said it was really hard for him to hold it together because Tim Meadows just did that off the rip, that was just immediately the just an immediate improv there that Meadows came up with on the spot, which is just fantastic. I mean, I would expect nothing less. Meadows is always I still every time I think about his, "I didn't leave the South Side for this" line reading in Mean
Mhm.
Girls, it makes me laugh. So, not to mention again, as we've spoken about previously, everything in Popstar that he does is so funny
Yes.
to me. But just tremendous work here. But yeah, 80's getting a really hard hitting moments here. This bird eats better than I do.
I know, and I was wondering where that came in, if he just kept listing things. There is no way you know what what escargot should taste like or whatever it was now. I can't even remember, but
I thought
it
it
just
was either escargot or
okay.
caviar. It was like one of the
It
two.
may
It
have
was
been
something like
caviar. It may have been
some
yeah.
sort of like
Um,
absurdly decadent French
it
dish.
was it was caviar, now that you say that. There's no way you know what caviar tastes like. So, it's good. Obviously, I think we're building up to a confrontation there between Eagly and Red St. Clair. We've got 4 episodes left there. Um, all of these paths are going to have to cross, whether that happens next week or a uneasy alliance or a feeling like we're being betrayed but not really being betrayed kind of
Yeah.
situation, which is kind of what I think we're probably leaning into is Harcourt. Yes, she's meeting Chris, but once they're talking and whether or not she's wiretapped or not, but maybe it's okay, here's the plan, here's what we need to do, kind of thing. I don't know, but I'm anxious to watch the fifth episode. But also, in realizing watching that fifth episode, we're even further removed from 6, 7, and 8, and I just cannot wait to see what's in store there. We talked a little in the last episode about that throwaway line or seemingly throwaway line of um, how's Mr. Grant uh,
Yeah, a lot of,
in
good
Argus.
discussion, about
Yeah,
that. I got a couple of responses to that on Twitter as well.
I even told you, I think going back to Superman, when we were talking about the JSA mural at the Hall of Justice, Gunn said one of those people has already been cast, and it's a big name. And we know Wildcat is on there. So the first thing I said to you was, okay, Stallone. I mean,
Right.
you've got an aged boxer type who is also seemingly getting cancer results. I was like, Rocky, that sounds like Stallone to me right there. But evidently, Gunn said something about that's all. That was just a line. That was just a reference, and
Mm,
that's all there is to that. So maybe
that's
not. I don't know.
disappointing. I
Uh,
like our canon,
I'm
or
gonna
our
stick with
head
our
canon
canon. I'm
there.
gonna stick with
Yeah.
our head canon on that one. But if it and obviously Stallone. I mean, Stallone and Gunn are. That's not the first time they've worked together. Um, between Guardians and the Suicide Squad, so I would not have been shocked to see him. But the buildup of what is seemingly coming in these final 3 episodes does seem like that kind of thing where it's like, oh well,
Yeah.
and now here's Stallone playing Wildcat, and here's maybe we open another door and there's some other. We talked about Ben Affleck being Kite Man, never going to happen. But just stuff like that could resound into. I mean, yeah, I guess you could call them multiversal jokes, but at the same time, like we were talking about a minute ago, one of the reasons I do enjoy that this is just this thing exists and we don't have to do any more heavy lifting with it is because DC in kind of flailing around of what to do in these past few iterations have leaned heavily onto the multiverse of it all. I mean, the Arrowverse's final, crossover was, as I called it, the Diet Coke Crisis on Infinite Earths or Crisis on
Yeah.
Infinite Earths Junior, and then you had
It's
the
it's
Flash movie, and
yeah.
so it's there's elements of that where it's also like, yes, this is a thing that exists, but do we have to retread yet again to shine a light on it, or is it just this is a normal part of life that most people are aware of?
It's so funny you bring those up because, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, with all honesty, there was a certain point on The Flash in which I jumped ship on that and was, you know, passively aware of the Crisis crossover. I think just at a certain point, writing duties and other things that had going, you can't watch
Mhm.
everything, right? So you have to really
Mm-mm.
prioritize what your beats are, and GQ was not really banging down my door for a lot of coverage of the CW universe of shows,
Can't
however
imagine
good
why.
or bad that they were. I mean, it sounds like by all accounts, a lot of people have a lot of time for Superman and Lois, and I think that is probably the one in which I feel the worst about not keeping up with on a consistent basis. Like, I've seen clips of, every month or so, I feel like some sort of Twitter premium user trots out the clip of Clark and everyone at the diner where he has to
Mhm.
reveal his identity as
Mhm.
like engagement farming. And it works because it's a great scene. Even that out of
Mhm.
context, like I have a lot of time for that. So I would like to go back and revisit that series when I have, I don't know, 33 hours to
Yeah.
do so. But
Yeah.
and then I spoke about this with our friend, Justin Vactor on his podcast when it came out, but I just have like a real fundamental ethical issue with the Flash on a lot of levels. I found the CGI recreations there and the multiverse stuff just to be like a fundamental ethical problem.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that just did not vibe with that story or the lead performer in that movie in any way,
I
shape,
was
or
gonna say,
form.
let's clarify, you are talking about the film and not the TV show for
Oh
anybody.
yes, no, I'm
Yeah.
talking about the Ezra Miller Flash
Once
directed
you
by
got
Andy
once you got
Muschietti.
everything you said could have also implied the show until you got to the lead actor comment. So I just
No,
wanted to make sure
I
we
mean,
were.
Grant's performance in that show, I think, is wonderful,
Yes,
and
yes,
I
absolutely.
had a lot of time for that show even when I got really silly, I think because of how good Grant's performance in that show is. So, I think I just a lot of those things I had just erased from my mind because I don't really have a lot of strong fondness for them, but yeah, you're absolutely right that I do think DC had actually hit that multiverse angle pretty hard in recent years, which makes me again think that this is just going to be something that is restricted exclusively to Peacemaker and
I
not something that spills out much past this. It is, I think,
Right,
a very handy narrative tool to explore what happens when Chris gets what he's always wanted,
right.
and the realization to your point that I think we are increasingly headed towards that the grass is not always greener on the other side, and what that does to him, and I would be curious if Peacemaker comes back for a 3rd season, how they continue to reshape that same ideology, because I think a lot of it is Peacemaker's search for not quite himself, but search for family and a found family, which are very much within Gunn's wheelhouse of themes and ideas in which he likes to explore. Would be very curious what a season 3 does as far as continuing to reshape or reformat or reexamine that same theme, but it is a potent one in this one. Uh, I have a question for you about Harcourt and Flag, but I want to
Mhm.
give you an opportunity to chime in
I
on
was
any of
just
those
gonna
points before
say
I do.
to that point of a season, what that looks like is a good conversation for you and I to have, and it may be something for the 5th episode when we haven't watched ahead, but where this road does lead for Chris when Argus is in his I mean, is it so easy that he just hands over the technology in the end and that's it? Are we all, shake hands and go our separate ways like at the end of Ocean's 11 or what, what the element is there. So I feel like we put a pin in that and come back to it. And then the other thing I want to say is I've always said Grant Gustin is a poor man's William Goodman. So, there you go for whatever that's worth for you.
Your check's in the mail. That's highly flattering.
Go ahead. What was your question?
I did you think that this was I couldn't quite get a read on whether or not this was supposed to be the first time that it's not it doesn't read as the first time that Harcourt and Senior have met, but it does in some ways read that they have certainly not spent a lot of time together. The tension of that scene is how much of his coffee order, for example, does she
Mhm.
know because that's how Junior liked his, and she's picking up on that and extrapolating. Have they had a lot of communication before? Does he know about their relationship? So I think some of this will probably explore in coming weeks, or
Mhm.
I would hope that we
Mhm.
would, given the fact that now that they've connected, I think that is a bridge to open up further conversations. I was just curious on your read. We were talking off mic. I did not have time to dive into this a second time. Unfortunately, I'm recovering from a bit of I was down with the sickness.
Mhm.
I'm feeling better now, but just didn't have time to hit this a second time. So I was curious in your secondary viewing what you took out of that sequence.
Yeah, I think that whether or not it's just because the two of them work together or because her work overlapped with Senior at some point, I do think that they've connected a good bit. I mean, down to the point of I've always told you not to, don't call me General. Please call me Rick, which has got to be weird for her with the same name and everything. And then of course he calls him Ricky. But there was also that line of, "Do you remember what I said to you at the funeral?"
Yeah,
That he says to her. So I feel like that they have a pretty solid history there, enough for him to fly across the country and at a moment's notice and go to her, and try to recruit her for help. And of course, it's put her in a now she's between a rock and a hard place and a hard place. I feel like because we've already had this, finding out that she had this relationship. Not even if you want to base it on the affair of it all, but if you even call it an affair, but th- they go so far
dalliance.
as to say, yeah, but they go so as far as to say when she's getting dressed and he's still in bed that you were my only friend, and I'm pretty sure we've screwed that up now.
Mhm.
So I think there's definitely, and I think Rick obviously, I got the feeling he knew there was more there than just the friendship
Sure.
of the two of them. Whether or not that ever, well, I guess time did not come. Time was not on Rick Jr.'s side for that information to come out, at least while he was still alive. If after that afternoon delight, he was shipping out in 2 hours for Corto Maltese, and then obviously everything else that happened at Corto Maltese happened. Um, I did find it interesting. We were talking about um, the mention of June, and I wasn't even thinking about, because again, I've not revisited that film, but she doesn't make it out alive at the end of that. I don't think so.
I haven't
It
seen it, so I
does,
wouldn't
right?
know.
You
So
haven't seen
I,
it, so
so I can't
so
remember.
well. If she did, let me back up because I'm to get my cred cards taken away from me. If she did make it out alive, a quick Google would clear this up for me, but I'm too lazy to do it.
I, I, I,
The sorceress did not make it out alive,
June
and
may have made it out alive,
June
but
may have
maybe
made it out
not
alive. The sorceress did not make it out
Enchantress.
alive. The enchantress, excuse me, and there's, obviously references to her still having those abilities right before he goes to on his mission for the Suicide Squad. So while we have carried that character over, it is not the same path that character took necessarily from Suicide Squad to the Suicide Squad. I say all that to say, though, to answer your question, that yes, I do think that there is some history there. I wouldn't be surprised. We've gone pretty heavily in on flashbacks this
Yeah,
season, which we did to a degree in season one as well. But even joking about finding out where that technology came from, and then literally it being in the cold open of this week, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a flashback to a Rick Senior and Harcourt scene, maybe even the funeral. I don't know, but something that shows their deeper connection, and maybe will explain if he knew that they were more than just friends. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be shocked at them showing that, since they have kind of gone back to the well on these interludes, um, which are I like, and I also feel like they're kind of time bumpers to a degree, just because of our varying degrees of storylines for everybody going on from this Earth and that Earth, and Adebayo's got a thing going on. Economist has got his thing going on. Harcourt's got her thing going on. Argus has got their thing going on. Eagly's got his thing going. Really, the only person who doesn't have their own thing going on is Adrian. Except that he
that
keeps
is
mentioning, wondering if he has another version of him over there, and I've got to feel like that's going to come back in some form or fashion.
so two things. While you were vamping there, I was able to confirm
Sorry.
that they kill. No, it was great. I always get confused about Enchantress because there's not only is there an Enchantress in DC Comics, there's also one in Marvel Comics.
Right, right.
Critically, one that's a very powerful tech card in Marvel Snap. So I always get confused about the two. Love Enchantress 4/6 removes all ongoing abilities from cards in Marvel Snap. Great card. But yeah, they were able to kill Enchantress and free June. That is
Okay.
sort of the denouement of the movie in
So
some
so she
regard.
did make it out alive, but Enchantress did not, and
But
then it
presumably June
sounds
still
like
has some sort of
the
magical
abilities.
ability that
Right.
made everyone concerned enough to, be worried about another potential
If
earth-shattering
anybody
event.
wants to give me mess for not remembering that, please remember that would involve me revisiting Suicide Squad, and I won't be doing that anytime soon. Well, anyway,
Also
that
a
was one of
movie
your
that
points. What
is
was
that
your
is largely not canon, so it doesn't matter anyway. So,
correct? Correct. What was your other point?
uh, just that that is one thing that I think I have found a little disappointing about this season is just the real I felt like season 1 did such a good job of balancing everyone as far as the
Mhm.
ensemble cast goes, and I do feel like as great as the moments Steve Agee is getting and the great as the moments are that Adebayo is getting, I really feel like Adrian has been sidelined this season in a way that is just a little frustrating. Like, I don't love that he's playing second fiddle here. I think
Mhm.
So I'm hopeful that again, we're at the halfway of this point. I'm hopeful that he will have more to do in the back half of the season, but really low batting average for a guy who was one of my favorite parts of season 1, was not super familiar with and I'm blanking on his name right now, I'm sorry.
Adrian. Oh,
No, the actor, Freddie Stroma.
Freddie Stroma, yeah.
Was not super familiar with him as a performer at all and was tremendously impressed with him during season 1. I think his work and Cena's work, honestly, were some of the biggest standouts to me in season 1. So to have him really is kind of Chris's gopher and his Michael Clayton-esque fixer for a lot of these things is,
Mhm.
I think, an interesting way to explore their dynamic, but I would really like for him to get some more solo time, and maybe there will be more of an opportunity once we get over to Earth X to see what that version of the character does, but we haven't even seen him in his Vig suit despite we've
Right,
seen
we
that
were
more in the
talking about that
credits, which is
last
the point
week.
we've spoken about before, but
Mhm.
it just feels like a little bit of an underutilization from a performer who I was, like, pretty blown away by in season 1, and so I'm hopeful that there's more to come there because if there's not,
Mhm.
I think that's going to be one of my biggest criticisms of this
It
season.
it would be mine too. So, and I think everybody knows how well loved he is. So I don't see that coming. There is a shot in the trailer, and we need to talk about the trailer a little bit. A because of well, not so much because of this, because it could be nothing. But there is a shot of him in the vigilante costume, um, hiding behind bushes. So I'm wondering if he's scoping out his doppelganger,
Mm.
for one thing. Two, there is a Peacemaker trailer that was originally released that has been re-released, but now there is an FX shot of a black hole that looks very similar to the Superman black hole.
Interesting. I had not seen this yet.
So
I appreciate
I'm
that you're on trailer watch because I really am just engaging with this show almost exclusively through screeners and
yeah,
nothing else. So
yeah.
I'm glad that you're keeping this in the fold.
I'm enjoying listening to the Peacemaker podcast. I'm not a huge podcast guy. I know that's a weird thing to say after doing this for 2 decades. Um, I think it's because I edit so many people's, and at the end of the day, I'm just like, "Man, I'm tired of listening to people. I've hit my limit." But watching Gunn and the cast interact, I'll watch it, so I don't feel like it's as much as a podcast type thing. But watching them all interact, you see the love that Gunn has for these characters, for something he's created. He gets to work with his wife and his best friends, and I see how much they admire him. I see how much he admires them, and I do know how loved Freddie was, how loved Adrian was, and I really think these final 3 episodes will hopefully give him a chance to shine because yeah, the BTK, the serial killer glasses and the acid wash jeans can only go so far. He can only show up with bone saws and doors so many times before he's got to finally get into the fray
I
himself.
You saying that about the trailer makes me have the notion that if and when Chris does go back to Earth X, the person to save him from himself in some regards being or some possibility being Adrian, I think is poetic in a way and
Hmm.
really would be would show, I think, the depth of that relationship. I like that as a thematic and character development, so that would be cool if that ends up happening, and who's to say if it will or won't at this point, but that would certainly make his lack of screen time and presence in this front half, a little bit more worthwhile if it's building to this larger narrative moment.
And I can't imagine. He's already gotten his feelings hurt once this season about not being included on the orgy. If Chris were to leave and not say anything to anybody, which I could totally see happening if he does make the decision to go to the other Earth and leave everybody behind, that's not going to sit well with Adrian
And
at all.
he's the only one of the team so far that has also been inside of it multiple times at this point that
Hmm.
has a little bit more of an understanding as to how it works. So if the 11th Street kids need to send someone in after Chris, Adrian feels like the best possible option. So, I mean, we'll find out sooner rather than later, I assume, but again, I think that is maybe where we're headed with that particular
Yeah.
moment, so
Yeah.
I'm
And I
hopeful
and
in
I
that
wouldn't
regard.
be I wouldn't be surprised if everybody goes, but
Sure.
that he's still the one to talk him down off the edge. There's got to be a reason, we've got to be okay with the fact that he, whether or not in self-defense, it was self-defense, that he killed the other Peacemaker. Like, there's
Yeah.
got to be something's got to be bad enough over there to make the actions that have happened thus far okay to be washed away and not hold Chris at fault for anything. And, I think about how if this is I keep going back to the will of a Nazi Earth. I don't a dictatorship Earth. I don't know a better terminology to use. Or in Earth X, it often, it
I
is
think
the
again, given Gunn's exploration of this, I think until we find out otherwise, I think Nazi is a catch-all. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe a little intense, but also like again, is well within our right to assume that given Augie's ideologies and Gunn's particular exploration of this topic. Like I think that's perfectly fine to call it as such. And if we have to backpedal when that comes out, then that's
Well,
fine. But
and it no, and it makes for interesting bedmates too, because like you and I are both from the South originally. We see what Augie is on our Earth,
yes.
right?
Yep.
We have seen the fact that he was charging people to watch his kids fight each other. Like, we've seen the white trash of the white trash of it all. He is, that it couldn't really get any lower for him over there, to the fact that he has become a superpowered villain called the White Dragon. And then over here, they're rich, like they're loaded, like they've got money, and like there's no toxic masculinity for which he has to hide affection for his son, so he can openly say he loves them. Like, it's like there's some underlying element of just evil there to me, that's like unspoken evil, like that something else has to be at work to make all the niceties turn dour really quick.
Yeah, I mean, there is something I think we've hit it pretty hard that there's something irregular over there,
Hmm.
and that not is all what it seems. So yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to be a happy ending for anyone involved. You know, I think there might be an opportunity for Senior to have some sort of closure with Ricky, but even that I think is going to be doused in some level of somberness or melancholy in a way that is it's not it's going to be bittersweet to tragic no matter what the resolution is. Like it's not going to be something that I think when it ends, it's going to end poorly and quickly. And I think it's going to be a tough beat for really everyone involved. I mean, I think the conditionality of Augie and Keith's love is going to change the second they find out that this Chris is not their Chris, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And despite Keith's platitudes that he loves Chris no matter what, that will change when you find out that this guy who looks and sounds and biologically DNA scanner approved wise is your brother, but he's actually not. Like that dynamic is going to
Yeah.
shift and be quite stark once it does.
Well, if Adebayo does come over there and he refers to her as his best friend, that's not gonna go well out of the gate, I would think. If what we believe is going on over there is what's going on over there. So we'll see. Do you think there's anything to the whole I found another door, the 9 doors down or whatever, but I found this other door that also had Peacemaker helmets, like a rack of helmets outside? Like, is that just the mirror, like the opposite of it all, like that's the constant, or do you think there's more to this whole, well, there's way more to the story of how Augie managed to have all this tech?
I definitely think there's something more to the idea of inheriting all of this tech. Like, I do not think it was something that Augie created. I think it's something that Augie either took from Earth X Peacemaker and was able to reinterpret it and refashion some way, shape, or form, and or outright stole from the other Earth X, and then was bringing those in to our Earth somehow and was keeping them a secret I don't know how that would work if they're still within the expanded if they're in the bleed, for
Mhm,
example, if they're in the storage area, the plot mechanics of that get a little wonky to me, but I do not believe it was as simple as Augie is smart enough. We've already seen the veil of his smarts come down, seeing in
mhm,
how, um, they basically stole this technology from a visiting alien. Now, whether or not that alien had a rack of helmets and that's where Augie stole the helmets from, or was able to take take that technology and fashion it into these helmets of some sort. I do think that was intentionally loaded in a way that we will find out where some of this came from, whether again it's stealing or repurposing or whatever the case it is. But by all accounts, this is not. I like the fact that Gunn is continuing to deconstruct this myth of Augie as this like brilliant supervillain or whatever it was, where really he was just a racist who got super lucky.
mhm.
And I think we've already seen that, and with this cold open showing that the bleed was not something that he created or really even found on his own. It was more Chris, honestly, finding in working that technology. It would not shock me if the helmet's false suit is
Well,
something that was totally just a lark and not any sort of invention of Augie. Even if the dragon armor too is that, that's something to me at this point that feels like was stolen or refashioned or
made into the
reinterpreted.
white dragon, yeah, yeah,
Exactly, as opposed
for
to a creation of any sort involving any sort of smarts or creativity or wherewithal at all.
which would require some sort of flashback of seeing our Augie stumble upon that Earth,
Yeah.
at some point in the past. Um, and then there's also this, totally lost my train of thought. I had a point and I lost it, but yes, yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And, I know what I was gonna say. To the point that even in the cold open, I thought that was a helmet
Yeah.
at first, and it looks similar to a Peacemaker helmet,
I think it's
the
all of a
technology
whole
that's the
for
door.
sure.
Right. So I think that there's gonna be some kind of Venn diagram here where all that connects or crosses over, I guess, and we'll see that play out. But it makes me really excited for these final few episodes, especially, the more he talks about, him being Gunn, about how much he's some of the favorite stuff he's ever done, and yeah, how crazy it gets, and
I just
there's
hope I
so much from the trailers we haven't even seen happen yet. So
Yeah. I just hope that this isn't a creative overselling something. This happens every now and again. One of my favorite things, I can't take credit for this term, writer, editor who I really admire, who's not very active on Twitter anymore, Sam Donsky came up with this idea of director bullshit.
hmm
Really kind of coined to the Russo brothers talking about how Winter Soldier was the Marvel version of, like, 3 Days of the Condor. Like, that is
right,
really where it started, where it's like you just claiming these outlandish comparisons for the sake of selling your movie, and I'm not saying that James Gunn is saying that Episode 6 is his version of Lawrence of Arabia, right?
right,
But I
right.
do I do get a little concerned and a little skeptical sometimes about creatives overselling the work that they've done, and so I'm just gonna be a little disappointed if in the same way that I have maybe overhyped a
Yeah,
friend
I get
a buddy of mine, for example, right? Like, I was very gung ho on Weapons. I think a couple of my friends who saw that movie in retrospect were like, "This was not as cool as you
as
it was
as
cool, but
as
it
everybody made
wasn't
it
as
out to
good as
be.
you thought it was." Yeah, exactly, and I think a lot of that
To
comes down to personal preference and also
Oh,
in the
sure.
context in which you see it. Like, I got to see that really before a lot of critical consensus around that movie was formed,
Right.
so, like, my reception to it is going to be very different from someone who's been hearing for 3 weeks it's the best horror
You
movie since The
you weren't
Exorcist, right?
you weren't watered
So
down by anything.
but I'm gonna go into that expectation when I see one battle after another next week, after hearing David Ehrlich this week say that it's the best American released movie since
I saw
Mad Max
that.
Fury Road. So, it's like expectations are a hell of a thing, and so I'm just worried that when we get to episode 6, if it's not the best thing since Lawrence of Arabia, that we're gonna be a little disappointed.
I get that, but I also wanna say, unless I'm misremembering, he never said it was the best thing he's ever done. He said it was
Sure,
his
that's
favorite
fair.
thing he's ever done.
Yes, important
So,
distinction.
And so that to be important to him versus important to us is two totally different things, and he may be hyping it for himself more than anything. I think, mileage may vary, but you need to, uh, keep that in mind, just because
Yeah,
he absolutely loved what he did there, that it's, some of his favorite stuff he's ever done doesn't mean it's gonna be ours. But
that's
I
true.
do think that there's gonna be something there. We've talked about, the Luther henchmen, showing up. Obviously, we know that we've said before that they were filming simultaneously right next to each other in Atlanta. We've seen pictures of Danielle with David Cornsweet in the Superman costume. We now, after last week's episode, saw a picture of Cornsweet in the Superman costume with Cena in his Earth X outfit.
Garb, yep.
So there's potential there. I'm not saying the Superman of it all, but I think there's potential there for a lot of things to happen. Not just because we do exist in a cohesive universe now on the same Earth, but because we have these other 99 doors that, for all intents and purposes, should Argus gain access to it, they're not going to know where to go or what to do.
No.
One of those shots in the trailer is Flurry wearing a radiation suit walking around
Which I thought we were
between
getting this week
the
and
portals.
was
Yeah,
surprised to see that now feels like something we're probably getting is a later and these, end 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I want us to be us, not you and I, but just like us as fans,
hmm
critics,
hmm
viewers of this show. I don't want this to turn into a WandaVision, we're getting Mephisto situation
yeah,
here.
yeah.
I know we did some speculation a couple weeks ago about potentially seeing Harley Quinn, and who knows if that's the case. That would be really cool if we have an opportunity to see some characters from the Suicide Squad appear in this. That'd be really really great. But if it is also only Kite Man, not Ben Affleck version, but just actual Kite Man, that would
Right.
be cool too. So I don't know, I'm walking back, some things here, I think a touch in just in case we're, maybe overreacting to this a little bit, but who's to say? I think as long as the show continues to focus on character above anything else, I think we'll be in steady hands, and by all accounts, that seems to be really what Gunn is focused on above all else. So we're in a good spot.
Absolutely, absolutely. We will be back next week with the fifth episode. In the meantime, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search the House of L. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. We're also on social media everywhere at Super House of L, and you can email us mail@superhouseofl.com. Just released today, well, at the time of this recording today, but check out my interview with Neva Howell, who played Martha Kent in Superman this summer. Released that on Monday, and love for you to check that out. She was a joy to talk to, and I'm hoping before all is said and done here, we get a Peacemaker chat with somebody between for you and me. I would love that also.
That'd be great.
Yep. All right.
James, if you're
Well,
listening, come on the pod.
James. All right. So back for episode 5. Hope everybody enjoyed this one. I know I sure did. I cannot wait to see where we're going from here. The final 4 hours of the show are going to be frantic and hopefully fantastic. So we will see you guys next time.